Hi everybody, I'm John Marie from Risk Services, Johannesburg, joined here by Michiel today to talk about SOC audits. So Michiel, thank you so much for joining me today. We get a lot of clients that we do SOC audits for. So for the ones that does not know what a SOC audit is, can you please explain to us what that is and what it entails?
Yes. Let me start with this. What is SOC? It is not SOK, it is SOC. And basically it is the abbreviation for Service Organization Control Audit or Report. So in those three words, Service Organization Control, are actually the meaning of the SOC audit and the SOC report. It deals with service organizations, number one, and then number two, the internal control systems that service organizations have implemented to manage their risk. Now, service organizations, who are they? It is an audit term, so unfortunately it's an audit term, but we can also talk about service providers. Now, it's not any kind of service providers. It goes without saying. My garden services also provide services to me. It is certain types of service providers. Service providers that are processing data on behalf of their clients is one example, but it goes further than that. As soon as a service provider a service provider is not only touching the data of a client, but also provide processing facilities, for example, like hosting, as well as software to process certain data. Those kind of service providers are the important ones for that might need a SOC audit and a SOC, eventually a SOC report that they can provide to their clients or customers, but normally they refer to them as their clients. What is important is that why is it important to have a SOC audit and to provide a SOC report to your clients when you are a service organization or a service provider? And we have seen the past 30 years or more where companies more and more started to outsource their services or certain services to other companies that specialize in certain services. A good example is in South Africa, for example, medical scheme administrators that perform the administration of medical scheme membership processing as well as claims processing and so on. So some medical schemes outsource it to certain entities in South Africa to do that processing for them. Now, when the medical schemes, external auditors, their financial auditors come in once a year to perform the annual audit, they stop and say, wait a minute, but all the processing is taking place at another company, your service provider. We cannot audit your financial statements without auditing those systems that are used to process your data. We have to go and audit the service provider. And the service provider says, wait a minute, I cannot handle all these auditors. There's no way that I'm going to allow all these auditors in to come and audit me. What I will do is I will obtain an independent audit report from an audit firm once a year and provide it to all my clients and their auditors so that they can rely on that report. And that report deals with a third word in SOC, Service Organization Control, where that report must, that audit and the report must address that what controls are important at the service provider that were implemented by the service provider to not only secure the data, but also to make sure that the data is in a complete and accurate manner, processed in a complete and accurate manner. And it will eventually, I will touch now on the SOC 1 and the SOC 2 audit and so on. But what is important is that what happens is that service provider gets the report from the audit firm, provides it to their clients and their auditors, and those auditors are supposed to rely on that contents of that report. Now, obviously, that report must be an unqualified report so that they can rely on that. Now, actually, it's a very boring report to a great extent because it contains a lot of detail. It pretty much reads like a detailed working paper of an auditor. And the reason for that is that the service providers, clients, auditors must be able to obtain enough information from that report to say, okay, these are the controls in place, these are the risk controls, this is what was tested, I would have done the same. I can rely on this, provided that it's an unqualified report. And that means that client, the service provider's client's auditor doesn't have to go to the service provider to audit them. They can take that report and rely on that for their audit. Now, first of all, SOC is more an American term. The Americans came up with the SOC 1 and the SOC 2. The grandfather of the SOC audit was actually the old SAS 70 audit. Now, the SAS 70 audit was used and abused by all audit firms to report on basically anything. And the SAS 70 audit was, the intention with the SAS 70 audit that time was to express an audit opinion on the internal controls of a service provider or a service organization that most likely are relevant to their clients' internal control over financial reporting. But there was no other audit standard, and audit firms started to use it to express opinions on all sorts of IT controls and so on. So the Americans came up with the SOC 1 and the SOC 2 audit, and there's also a SOC 3 audit, but that is something that didn't really pick up in South Africa so far. Now, the reason why they came up with the SOC 1 and the SOC 2 is that the SOC 1 addressed financial reporting. Concerns about financial reporting, I will explain now. And the SOC 2 address issues around IT security, data availability, data privacy, etc. I will go into that as well. So let me first go down the rabbit hole of the SOC 1. The SOC 1 is primarily for expressing an audit opinion of a service on the internal control of a service organization, a service provider, that most likely are relevant to their clients' internal control over financial reporting. To come back to the example of medical scheme administrators, for example, the medical schemes auditors need to do an audit on the financial statements. In order to do that, they need to understand how the systems that are used to process that data are working. Are they properly configured? Are they properly controlled? Is the data complete and accurate, but also valid? Now, valid also refers to things like did authorized users capture, for example, that data? If unauthorized users captured that data, ipso facto, it means that that data, by definition, is invalid. And that deals with the security aspect as well of these audits. Now, the SOC 1, the core focus should be on the business processes as well as the controls in the applications that process certain data. But obviously, there are a galore of IT controls around that application that is used to process data that should also be considered in the SOC 1 audit. And therefore, what we refer to as general IT controls around the application that processes data. Now, it can happen that a service organization says, can we first focus just on the general IT controls and then later on the business processes and the application controls as a next step in the subsequent SOC 1 audits and so on. So that is possible. We can do that, but it is then perhaps better sometimes to do the SOC 2 audit. Now, what is the SOC 2 audit? The SOC 2 audit is not concerned about the internal control of a service organization that are related to their clients' internal control over financial reporting. It is concerned about IT security, system and data availability, data privacy, data confidentiality, as well as data processing integrity. And those 5 principles mean different things. Security doesn't only deal with logical and physical access, it deals also with change control, incident management, risk management, third-party supplier management, more or less. There are a few smaller things, but that is what the security principle deals with. Data availability deals with additional things that relates to system and data availability that was not covered by the security principle. Now, what's the difference between data privacy and data confidentiality? Now, that is interesting because the SOC 2 makes use of a trust criteria. The trust criteria describes the 5 principles. And the trust criteria differentiates between data confidentiality and data privacy. Data privacy as related to people's data and confidentiality related to legal entities or juristic entities' data. Now, this is very interesting because in South Africa, where we got the Protection of Personal Information Act, POPIA, unlike GDPR, the European version, actually describes personal data as people's data as well as juristic entity data. Now, what is juristic entity data? That would be things like intellectual property. I have a client where, for example, they make use of a certain financial institutions' algorithms to do certain data analytics. Those algorithms is intellectual property of that financial institution. And therefore, it must be protected. That's a juristic entity, it's a legal entity's data. Now, the privacy principle deals with the people's data. All the demographic data, what we call it, the demographic data of a person, name, surname, address, etc., etc., is an extremely long list of variables that refer to people's personal data. Now, then the processing integrity principle deals with how a system also processes data in a complete and accurate manner. Now, what is important is that it is not mandatory that a company, when they go for the SOC 2 audit, to do all 5 principles. A company can, the bare minimum is security. You cannot get a SOC 2 report without the security principle, but they are welcome to choose. They also want to get a report on the system availability, the privacy, the confidentiality, and the processing integrity. That is in a nutshell, the SOC 1 and the SOC 2 audit.
Okay. So with the SOC 2 audit, talking about the trust service criteria, the 5 principles, there's also COSO included.
That's correct, yes. Not all the COSO principles, certain COSO principles that primarily deals with governance, around IT governance and so on. So the COSO is also mandatory. So when you do the SOC 2, want to go for the SOC 2 audit, is not only the security side of things, you also need to have certain governance controls in place. And a lot of companies say, okay, but we are ready. For example, we did ISO 27001. We are ready. You are very close. But there might be a few gaps because of the COSO principles. We cannot exclude that from the SOC 2 audit because it deals with how you govern your environment. It doesn't deal with technical controls. Where, for example, PCI audit deals with technical controls, and your ISO deals with a lot of documentation, but not necessarily with all the COSO principles.
So before we go into the detail of the types of reports you get, I just want to delve a little bit into having a qualified or an unqualified report, because I think that can sometimes be a little bit confusing. So if you can just explain that to us.
Yes. In short, you would like to have an unqualified report. When you have a qualified report, it means that the audit opinion, is qualified. There are certain areas that are problematic, where control breakdowns were found. We call it exceptions. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes you will get reports where the report would state that it's an unqualified opinion except for these areas, meaning that most of the control environment there were no exceptions found. But in certain areas, there were exceptions. Now, sometimes it could be systemic. So an auditor must, the person who signs off on the report must make a decision if this is systemic. Mm-hmm. Because if it is systemic, the exceptions that were found, it might mean that the entire audit is qualified. And so you would like to have an unqualified audit opinion. It's audit jargon. I know it is boring, but that is how the report reads.
Okay, and then we have the different types. So type 1 and type 2.
Yes, it can get confusing.
Yeah.
Bottom line again, you would like to have a type 2. Your clients' auditors can only place reliance on a type 2. If you provide them with a type 1, they cannot place reliance on that. Now, what is the type 1 and the type 2? The type 1 is what the auditors call design effectiveness, and then the type 2 covers operational effectiveness. So with design effectiveness, the type 1, if you are the client and I come to you and I ask you, okay, do you have antivirus? And you say, never heard about that. What is that? Okay, cross against that. You don't have antivirus. So the control was not designed effectively. Then you go and implement that, and we come back and do the type 2 audit, and we ask you, do you have antivirus? You say, yes, we do. So, okay, let us go and look at it. Does it function? Is it operating effectively? Was it rolled out to all the users, to all the servers? Or is it getting updated on a daily basis? Basically, you can go and look at the settings. That's the type 2. So the type 2 covers a period, and you would like to get to a period of every year, 12 months. So that every 12 months you can provide your clients with a report. The type 1 is at a specific date. So if we sign the report today, a type 1 report, we say on 4 June 2025, this and this and this about the design of the controls in the company. Now, why spend the money on a type 1 if the type 2 is the one to go for? And the reason for that is that many companies are not ready. We don't know where there are the gaps, and the type 1 can provide all those gaps to say these are the gaps.
And it would also show that you are on the journey of getting to your type 2.
Yeah, so if you get pressure from your clients, because that is what normally happens, is that service providers, the service organization gets pressure from their clients. If you cannot provide us with a SOC report, then we cannot do business with you any longer. And that is the problem, is that they get pressure, but it helps most of the time to say, I'm not ready yet, but we engage with an audit firm, and we did receive a type 1. There are some issues. We are committed to sort it out. This is the journey, and we are going to get audited on that date to get a type 2 audit. And most of the time, the clients are satisfied with that, and they will wait for that.
Okay. And now for service organizations, their clients have got different year ends. What's the solution to that? Because we're covering a 12-month period. So how do we deal with that? Because the auditors are going to ask for their specific 12 months.
Look, once you're on the cycle of 12 months, what can happen then is that the client, if there were no major changes in the environment, what they call a breach letter, that they can provide their clients with a breach letter stating that they are not aware of any fraud in their organization and there were no major changes that impact on the internal control system. And most of the time, the client's auditors would be satisfied with that.
Okay. And in terms of the benefits of a SOC audit, what would you say? Why should SOC service organizations get a SOC report?
Number one, all the clients that I'm dealing with and you are dealing with need to have it to retain their clients. That's the bottom line. Especially when you service American companies as well as European companies, your multinationals, your bigger companies, corporates and so on, that are operating under very stringent corporate governance requirements. And they cannot keep doing business with the service organization if they cannot prove that the internal control system is designed effectively and is operating effectively. Those companies, there's a good chance that they will terminate that relationship eventually. Another reason is that, and I believe that is what we're going to start seeing in South Africa more and more, but it is in Europe as well as the United States and so on, that because so much is outsourced these days, many hacks, many security incidents sometimes happen through service providers. And if we look at the Protection of Personal Information Act, the POPIA Act, for example, it's very clear that you, first of all, should have a SLA in place, a service level agreement, a contract in place with your service provider. You should stipulate what are your security and data privacy requirements in that contract. And but that's not enough. You must, the obligation is on you to make sure that your service provider comply with what the service provider promised in the contract. You got two options. The right to audit clause, and you send in your own auditors to go and audit. And if you're the only client of that service provider, then they can handle you. But if they have many clients, they would not be willing to tolerate every month new auditors coming into their offices. The second option is then the SOC report. And we have seen in South Africa very well-known corporates where there were security incidents, but it happened through the service providers. And where there was no SLA in place with that service provider, or there was no obligation on that service provider to comply with a certain level of security and data privacy standards. And where the data regulator came down on, not on the service provider, but on the company who outsourced those services. Very hard. And I cannot see how otherwise your South African organizations, your South African companies can actually fulfill that mandatory requirement of POPIA than through a SOC report. May I perhaps just deviate a little bit here? Many companies want to know, why can I not rely on my ISO 27001 certification? And the reason is very short. For ISO 27001 is a very good international security standard. I don't say do not go for it, but it's not an audit opinion. It is not an opinion that was expressed in an audit standard, in an international audit standard. And if you're a service organization and you outsource and you process data or you provide certain services, could be software, bespoke software development that you do to your clients, their auditors cannot rely on your ISO 27001 certification. It's not an audit opinion, it's not an audit standard. They cannot rely on that for auditing purposes. That's the difference between the SOC audit and the ISO 27001.
So there's also some keywords that people can look out for, because not everybody always calls it a SOC audit.
That's correct. Yeah. So to confuse you a bit more, there are different audit standards. So in the USA, they got the SSAE 18 that they used for SOC reporting up to now. And all countries outside the USA make use of the international ISAE 3402, what the Americans call the SOC 1 audit. Then for the SOC 2, outside the USA, we make use of the audit standard ISAE 3000. But don't get confused with that. Don't worry a lot about that, because those are only the audit standards that the audit firm is using to adhere to auditing standards, quality auditing, from the beginning to the end, to the writing of a report, signing off on the report that they comply with.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, it's a lot of information. SOC audits can be confusing, like you said. Some people might ask for a SOC 1 or an ISAE 3402 report. Others might say, I want a SOC 2 or ISAE 3000 report. I want a type 1, I want a type 2. So thank you so much for clarifying on all of those things. And I hope it's helped everybody that listens to this recording.
My pleasure.
Thank you.